Okay, welcome back to the next installment. This is the manual. I went ahead and printed it. They don't provide you with a manual in the kit. You do have to go online and grab it. I've already been through it, and I will tell you there is a mistake already right off the rip. So I'll show you that mistake when we get to it. You know, your standard stuff, dimensions, types of adhesives that are used, greases, which tools you need, small flat tip screwdriver, 1.5 millimeter, 1.3 millimeter, 2.5 millimeter calipers, needle nose, ball link pliers. Carton layout tells you what's in what bag. These are your pinion setups for head speed / flying style. So if you wanted to set up for hard 3D or soft 3D, your main blades are at the 273, 275 millimeter length. You're going to want the 50 millimeter tail blades, and you want to run plus minus 12 degrees of pitch. And it doesn't tell you which of the two pinions will get you to that head speed. You have a 14 that's included in the kit along with an 11. My guess, a lot of folks who build this kit are going to be running the 14. Since I am running this on 4S, I more than likely will be able to get away with the 11 tooth. Something I'll have to look at. I'll have to run the numbers just to see. But there's a side of me that's saying just go with the 14 and be done with it, and just use your governor and go from there. So I want to be able to have the option to go really high if I want to, but I'm not that kind of pilot. First step is going to be to assemble the tail, go through the blade grips, the tail blade grips, make sure everything is correct, grease and lube everything, and you will be CAing the fasteners back into place. They are telling you to use adhesives on the bearings for the vertical fin and on the tail, opposite side tail case, right side tail case. Then we'll be assembling the pitch slider. And again, this is all tail assembly stuff. The boom mount, or the push rod guide is already attached. It's already in place. I think you just have to use adhesive on the threads, and that's about it. Your pitch rod or tail control rod is in the boom. I believe it's already assembled, and if it's not, there's not much to the assembly. You don't really have to measure the length of your rod because of the fact that the servo sits on the tail boom. So the error in this particular manual is we have a page 12. Turn the page. Obviously, this should be page 13, so that part's right. But if you come to where page 14 is supposed to be, it says 13, so they skipped 14, and then the next page back is 15. So I'm not sure what we're missing on the page 14, but page 14 is missing. They reprinted 13. I thought maybe it was me, but I went into the PDF, and the PDF is messed up. They are showing adhesives being used on the radial bearings in the bearing blocks, but they're not on this one. These two they are, this one they're not. And then you will be Loctiting the set screw. And the one thing I did not check on the motor, which this may or may not be an issue, I don't know yet. Okay, so the motor does have a flat spot on it, so you don't have to worry about making a flat spot. There is a flat spot on it already. And that's if you go with the Lynx motor. There's, I believe, X-Nova makes a motor for this kit. I don't know about Scorpion. I just went with the Lynx stuff. And that's it right now for the manual. We will be starting off with the tail build first. Then we'll move into whatever the manual says to do next. It does look like that once the tail assembly is built, we're going to be moving into frame components, getting the frames built, build up the frames, main gears, which this is already assembled. This may have to, I believe all we have to do is just check for adhesive, to see if the adhesives were used on the metal-to-metal parts. Then you'll install the belt, and then the last thing we'll be building is the head. And then finalizing the electronics. I may be adding a little extra to this. We'll see. We'll see how space works out for me, and if the space works out, I'll be adding a little extra to this kit that will be overkill, but I would love to have it on here. So that's the manual, and now it's time to begin the actual build. Alright, we're back. So after going through the first few pages, all we're doing is they tell you that this is ready to go from the factory, and this piece is ready to go from the factory. Your blade grips, you'll want to disassemble them, apply grease, and then do as the instructions say. Then you'll apply your adhesive to your fasteners, and you'll reassemble your blade grips. You will says, important note, this comes pre-assembled without thread lock. It must be reassembled with thread lock as shown, so you'll need to disassemble all of this stuff and reassemble it with thread lock. I do not have thread lock today. This is just going through the initial build. You as the owner, pilot, whatever, the builder, you will be responsible for doing adhesives on your fasteners and greasing and lubricating the bearings as needed. I will not be doing that in this video series. I do not have the stuff right now to do it. I'm just putting the helicopter together on video so you guys can see how it goes together. When I get to my vacation spot here in the next week or so, I will disassemble this kit, and I will go ahead and do all the thread locking that needs to be done. So for this step, you're looking for tail output shafts with pulley. You will need your pitch slider, which is right there, and then this step tells you how to assemble your pitch slider to this step, which is how it comes from the factory. Alright, this comes pre-assembled already. Not much there you have to worry about. Just double check and make sure that it's thread locked. These parts are pre-assembled without thread lock, so you will have to disassemble this to thread lock it. Next page, again, it's just showing how it goes together. Alright, you get your bearings going into this piece, and then this piece, and by the time you get to the end of this, you will have this. So, yeah, that's how it's going to end up going together, just like so. And again, metal to metal fasteners that go into metal will be thread locked. And again, I am making the disclaimer, I am not using thread lock on this build right now. I will be disassembling to apply thread locker and to lubricate the bearings as needed. Okay, so again, this is your bell crank assembled, ready to go. Next, we're going to be looking at the push rod follower, which is already on the boom. It's already on there. Again, they're probably going to tell you that you need to thread lock that into place. So I will let you know what needs to be done when I come back. Alright, so the bell crank is attached to the right side of the rear tail housing. Alright, you get two fasteners that go into the back. Again, this will be thread locked. Alright, make sure it does move freely when you assemble this. It should. If not, you probably assembled it wrong. But that's all you do on that part. This here comes factory assembled with thread lock already, so there's no need to disassemble this and reassemble it. Just make sure you pay attention to that. Pay attention to the manual. It'll tell you what needs to come apart and what doesn't. Doesn't hurt to check, but I'm just letting you know that according to the manual, this comes already thread locked. So next we're going to move on to assembling the rear tail case to the boom. You will need to take this out of the boom, this reinforcement block. It will be at this end, these two holes. You take the 4 screws out and then that will slide out. Again, you'll need your vertical fin. It's probably going to go like that. This will go right here. You're going to need this piece. It's really hard to see. Alright, you will need that. That's in a bag. This is going to go back here. It's a guard for your belt. I'll show it to you when it's actually assembled. I'm going to do half the assembly. I'll get everything assembled on one side first, and then I will come back and show you. And the other thing that you'll need are your bearings for your belt guide. Camera doesn't want to focus on it. So you'll need the bearings for the belt guide. Alright, so that's what we're getting ready to do. I'm also going to get this installed, I will have this installed on half of it, and this will be one of the final steps once the output shaft is actually installed. So, alright, so I got one half built up. Here, let me get the belt off. I already fed the belt through the boom. I was able to just push it through. I mean, if you want to use something like a piece of cable, whatever, to help pull this through, you can. I didn't have to. I just pushed it through and it was just fine. Make sure you take your tail push rod out also. If not, your belt won't go through. So I assembled everything onto the carbon fiber first. The instructions want you to assemble it to the aluminum side. I did it to the carbon fiber side. Take note of the belt belt guide, the bearings for the belt guide. There's a fluted end and a non-fluted end. You want the fluted end to be on the carbon fiber or on the left side as your tail in. But other than that, it's really simple. This plastic back piece right here, it is stamped with Oxy. I don't think it matters if it's upside down or right side up, but for me, I made sure that it was right side up. And then the hole for the belt guide is the top hole right above the bearing, if my camera focuses. So that's that, and then obviously the output shaft is installed. And then the guard actually has metal inserts, so you will be thread locking that. Just to let you know, you will be thread locking that because it will be metal on metal because they put that metal insert in there. Alright, and then as it sits on the heli, the fin will slant towards the rear of the heli. So, alright, so let's finish getting this part assembled and then I'll pick this back up. Before I continue, I almost forgot. So once you put your belt in, this piece needs to go back in. It has to come out for the belt to go in. Once your belt goes in, you'll be installing this back inside the boom. This will help prevent the boom from crushing down on itself, and it gives the fastener something to bite into. Because the boom itself is fairly, I mean, it's thin, but it's not, it's thick, but it's not thick enough to hold thread. So, they use this block inside the boom to not only beef up the end of the boom to strengthen it up, but to give you a place to fasten your gearbox to the boom. So remember, belt goes in first. Well, first you take this out, then you slide your belt through, then you put this back in, and then all this stuff will fasten to this. All right, so that's what I'm going to do right now. Essentially, this is your completed boom. So I went ahead, added these two fasteners here, along with these two fasteners here. This is the belt guide. Look on this side. Down here, there's the belt guide right there. There's nothing for it to fasten to, so do not remove that screw or you will lose the bearings. There's a little divot in the output shaft. Get the grub screw started, and then get it started to the point where it actually catches that divot. Once you know that it's caught the divot, then you'll know that your tail rotor is set where it needs to be at, and then just continue to secure the set screw. Something I haven't mentioned yet on this build so far is that you will not need a whole lot of torque on these fasteners. They are smaller screws. That's why we recommend that you use the thread lock or some kind of adhesive. Preferably it's blue Loctite, according to the manual, because you don't want your screws backing out, because you won't be able to like super torque these down. This isn't a big heli, so you're not going to be torquing these too tight. Same thing when you go to do these assemblies. When you go to remove all the fasteners, you'll be using Loctite again. You're not trying to make these things so tight that you can't get them back out. That's the whole purpose of Loctite anyways, is to prevent the screws from backing out. So keep that in mind. I did have a slight issue getting the servo mounts on. Take note of the orientation. Let me see if I can get take note of the orientation of the servo mount. It's off center. The mount itself is off center. It's higher than it is lower, so make sure you take note of that. And plus, with the pre-assembled portion of it, these fasteners should be pointing down. The fastener head should be pointing down. All right. Something else that you'll need to do is underneath here, you got these two fasteners. Make sure you take them all the way out and try and open up the mount itself a little bit without destroying it. Just open it up a little bit. I found that it was really tight on the boom. I marred up the finish. I mean, chances are you're not going to see this once it's assembled, but just know that you could potentially scratch all this paint if you're not careful. And if you're like me and don't want to have that issue, make sure you open these up a little bit, and then once you get them kind of in place, just go ahead and just lightly secure them in place. Again, you will be using thread lock on these later on, or I'll be using thread lock on these later on. You do have a boom stiffener in here. So what you do is you straighten out your belt. Make sure that when you pull on the top, part of the belt, your rotor spins clockwise, and then what you're going to do is rotate the belt a quarter turn counterclockwise, as per the instructions, so that when this part spins clockwise, your tail output spins counterclockwise. All right. So you achieve that by giving it that quarter turn counterclockwise. Once your belt is running the way it should be running inside, it's not twisted or anything like that. This is probably going to be the hardest part of this whole build, is making sure that this belt is running correctly, because when it comes out of the bag, it's going to have a shape to it when it comes out of the bag, and it's going to want to stay in that shape. At least that's the problem I ran into. And that'll eventually wear out once you put tension on the belt. That'll work its way out. And then once you do that quarter turn counterclockwise, so it'll be a quarter turn counterclockwise as you're looking at it as such. Yes, my bench is a mess. All right. And then as you see, there's like that I-beam in there. All right. Again, that is a stiffener that needs to go inside the boom, so that when you go to tighten down the boom mount in the frames, you don't crush the boom. All right, so that's what that is for. Plus, it helps keep the quarter turn counterclockwise in place. And this is essentially your tail assembly, your tail boom. So the next step in the manual is to work on the mainframe. More than likely we'll be installing the boom block. We're going to be working on main gear. We're going to be working on your upper and lower main blocks, your lower main shaft support, probably installing your motor mount, and that's pretty much going to be the main frames. You will be utilizing these decorative washers for the fasteners. Oh, and we'll be installing the battery tray. And there's your main frames. Again, you're going to be, all these pieces are aluminum, so you will be using some kind of adhesive, whatever adhesive you decide to use. It's recommended to use blue. And no two blue Loctites are the same. I get this stuff from China. It's nicknamed Forever Tight. It never comes out. So keep that in mind. Before I move any further, I will be using the Robert Smith Industries blue Loctite green bonding agent where needed, and I will be getting the Robert Smith medium CA because I ran out, so I will be ordering that stuff. I'm trying to think. I think that's basically it. The Robert Smith blue, Robert Smith CA, Robert Smith green, and that should be all the adhesives that I'm going to need. And then for my lubricants, I am going to be using Tri-Flow liquid and Tri-Flow synthetic silicone grease for all the thrust bearings that are in all the various assemblies. And then where needed, I will be using white lithium. White lithium is generally going to be used on like your servos, like the servo gears, because they do need to be serviced. I ran them for about 20 or so flights 2 years ago, so it's time to re-grease those because they've sat for so long. So those will need to be re-greased, and I'll be using white lithium on those. That's main shaft stuff, main shaft. So yeah, all of this is going to be the next step. So this is already too long. Oh, and I still have to assemble the tail push rod. I'm not doing that until I get my CA. And again, that won't be till I get to my vacation spot. So anywho, that concludes the tail assembly. I already gave you what the next step is going to be for the next video, or for the next segment of videos. So yeah, happy building.